All right, today we're talking about outsourcing. We're talking about advantages
and disadvantages.
because there is both.
Oh.
Are both or is both?
Because there are both.
There are both.
Got to make sure your verbs agree. Coming up. Hey everybody, we're talking about the advantages and or disadvantages. Actually, we're talking about and.
Yes, and.
There's both. Mm-hmm. Advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing your work specifically for YouTube.
Okay, so here's the huge one. You outsource because of the cost.
That is huge.
I outsource to the Philippines. We're going to make another video on why the Philippines compared to like China or India or anywhere. But in the Philippines, cost of living is so low there that you can hire a really skilled, highly educated, trustworthy person for $400 a month, full time.
It's amazing.
And it's like a dream job for them.
Yeah.
Great opportunity. So I've got a whole team of people in the Philippines, and if I think about hiring somebody new and the skill sets that I need, if I then think about I'd have to hire what it would take to hire somebody here locally to me, it's just like that much money. I'd have to pay that, whether it's $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month to find somebody of that skill set.
Right.
And to think that I can get the same caliber of person for $400 or $500 or $600 per month.
That's amazing.
So just think what you could do. There's a lot of, because I've made lots of videos on this topic in the past, and there's a lot of negative feedback, especially around, well, it's not very patriotic to outsource, because you watch shows like Shark Tank and like, well, our product is made in the
America.
USA,
right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, we can have a big discussion and maybe a debate on that, but in the world of small business, I believe, because I've seen the fruits of it, that it is such a blessing for our country that we have the opportunity to outsource to other countries that have such a low cost of living. It provides huge benefits. I mean, one thing that I'll just mention real quick, it really increases our standard of living. I mean, look at this. If this were made in America, if this were manufactured in America, it would, I mean, these are expensive things too, because there's a lot packed into this, but
nobody would be able to afford it.
The company is headquartered in America, but it's not manufactured. All the pieces inside are not manufactured here, and the only reason that this is possible is because of outsourcing.
Yeah.
And so outsourcing.
Well, and two, if I could cut you off very quickly, I mean, as you mentioned from a small business perspective, if you weren't able to outsource what you do for such an affordable rate to the people of the Philippines, meanwhile blessing their lives, you wouldn't be able to have your small business. Mm-hmm. You could not afford to do it. So you have a small business that has an impact locally here. It's not as huge of a financial impact or an economic impact as the larger organizations have, who do have the resources, if they choose to, in many cases, to manufacture in America. But single guy, solo proprietor, if you can't do that, then you don't have the business. So that's the choice. Does the guy get to have his business and thus put money into the economy? Or do we get upset at him because he's outsourcing to people in another country? Really pennies on a dollar compared to what larger organizations.
Well, my company is a clear example. My company would not exist without outsourcing.
Exactly. That's exactly what I meant. You personally would not be doing
going back
this.
to my former service when I offered website design, all of our customers were in the United States. There was maybe a couple, one in Australia, maybe one or two in England. But think about all the help that we did to mostly American companies, helping them with their website, that we charged them such a significantly lower price,
right?
Obviously because our costs were a lot lower, and yet we charged a lot lower price, and we were very profitable.
That makes sense.
And so same thing nowadays. I mean, I help people with daily YouTube channels, and so imagine as a YouTuber, you hiring somebody to do your editing, your text effects, somebody to manage your topics and the launch of YouTube with all your keyword research and the designing the thumbnails. It can easily, for a daily channel, that can easily take a team of 3 or more people.
Yeah.
And because I outsource, the costs are obviously drastically lower, and that's why people can hire me to film 30 videos every single month. Let's move on to another benefit. This is really cool, especially when the country they're outsourcing to is literally on the other side of the planet.
Right.
Because I can go through my work day. If I work, a traditional, 8 to 5 type day, I finish my work. I have a list of tasks that I'm thinking I would like my team to do. Right when I'm ending my work shift, 5 a.m. for me is like 7 or 8 a.m. depending on daylight savings, 8 a.m. in the morning for them. So I finish my day, I give them a list of tasks, and by the time I begin my work, the next day, all those tasks are already done.
Yeah.
So that's so cool.
Round the clock.
To know that I'm sleeping and my team is working away.
Yeah.
So,
and they're not working graveyard shifts. They're working. This is a regular day. Yeah.
I let them control their hours,
which is also nice.
So another great advantage is I love the fact that this is helping people in a third world country, because there's a lot of charities, and sometimes I felt guilty for certain charities that I haven't contributed in, or humanitarian things that it's like, yeah, maybe I should contribute to that. And then I was reminded, because I participate in things through my church and whatnot, but it's pretty distant. It's kind of like donating some funds here.
Right.
And then I thought, and I'm feeling emotional about this, I provide full-time employment for 9 people in the Philippines. And I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not too many people can say that.
Indeed.
And so it was shocking to me at first. I've been outsourcing for 8.5 years. In the beginning, even for the first couple of years, it was shocking to me when they would, share their thanks and their gratitude with me. And it's because I feel like, man, I'm paying you $400 or I'm paying you $500 a month for full-time work, and and obviously I'm charging, for a website I would charge $2,000, and so I would feel a great sense of appreciation for them,
right.
Just like, I'm so grateful for what you do and that I'm able to do it for such a low cost. But to have them turn around and just say, for example, this is a woman that no longer works for me. She's now a full-time mom. She started working for me before she was a mother, and she shared, and I paid her about $400 a month. And she emailed me one time saying, she'd been working for me for about a year, and she said, thank you so much for allowing me to work with you for the past year. We were able to buy a new house that's up on a hill, so when we have the flooding, we don't have to worry about water getting in our home anymore. Oh. And it just...
Yeah.
Sorry. It really hit me, like, what a great service that this is, and again, I feel like it's such a great blessing to me and to entrepreneurs that are in the United States that can use this, and it's real humbling to know that it is a great help to them. Outsourcing really has raised the standard of living, the cost of the things that we buy, the cars that we drive, all the appliances, the furniture, the clothing that we wear. I can go and spend $100 on a shirt. But if I want to buy that same shirt for $10, I can because of outsourcing. But I can go to, I like to wear Under Armour. So I can go to the Under Armour store and find a shirt for $10 or $20, and you wouldn't be able to buy shirts of that quality for that low of a cost without outsourcing.
Yeah, that's true. We all benefit, no question about it.
Obviously, it's a big help to my business. Why am I making this video? Because I recommend that you outsource. Just think about the huge impact that would make. What would you do if you had somebody working for you 8 hours a day? And you could do a lot, and you didn't have to pay them $5,000 a month. You could pay them $500 a month.
A lot of people like to get into business to put their own energy into it, their own mental. I want to be the leader and the visionary. Mm-hmm. But especially in a small business setting, you end up wearing a million different hats, and to be able to outsource some of those hats at a very affordable price is exciting, no question about it.
Yeah, that's the difference of being self-employed versus actually being a business owner, where you get to grow and create systems that then, instead of trading your time for dollars, you're actually creating a business that runs independent of you.
Well, we promised some cons.
Yeah, we're going to talk about some disadvantages.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for 8.5 years. So these are from my real experience. And one is that I'm not there to look over the shoulders of my team. And my team, I'm talking to the camera right now because they're the ones that edit this video. I have a lot of trust in my team.
Clearly.
And I'm going to share a couple stories when it's kind of backfired. So it's listed under the disadvantages section here. But I'm not there, to look over the shoulders of my team or to supervise them. And when they say they work 8 hours, I just choose to trust. I expect to see results and stuff like that.
Right, but of course, get the job done.
Yeah. I've also found that through outsourcing to a foreign country, there's a little bit more hand-holding that's required. This could be a good or a bad thing. I mean, if I create a system, and I hire somebody to then follow the steps of that system, whether it's to design, a video logo, video intro in a certain way. When they create it the first time, it won't be what I am hoping for. But I can then go back in and say, okay, well, here's what you did right. Here's some things that I need corrected. And they'll go through and they'll make some improvements, but it still won't be exactly the way that I want. But over time, they'll get what I want. And so then when I hand them another project, I might have to give them feedback once or twice. And then, so over time, they learn. And so there is time required to train. And I call it hand-holding. Maybe that's, I don't mean that in any derogatory way, but it just takes time. I'm going to talk about one more advantage. The time that you put into people in the Philippines especially is well worth it because they're very loyal and they're not going to become your competitors. I was really worried about that at the beginning. If I share all my secrets, what stops them from leaving and starting their own company, becoming my competition? It just doesn't happen. We'll talk more about that in another episode. But it does take time, but it's worth it. You put the time into training somebody, and now it's really I've replicated myself because I train them to do things exactly the way that I've done it. And now I've replicated myself, and I can do it again and again. All right, so here's a disadvantage. I have found that some people are flaky, and this is just a practice. I've found that if I hire 2 people, that will typically end up being one good person because one person will just flake out and disappear. So a disadvantage is sometimes people are going to be flaky. There's things that you can't...
But that's also a disadvantage in a face-to-face setting. If you were working with them locally, you'd still also end up with a flake here and there. It just may take you longer to weed out the flakes if they're 9,000 miles away.
Yeah, definitely. Because you don't get to meet them in person. And we're going to make another video on how to find somebody and how to hire them, how to get them started. I have some great tips on that I've learned over the years. But it's different. It's different than meeting somebody in person and getting to shake their hand and whatnot. Now I'm going to tell you the story. So Scott asked me about my first experience outsourcing.
Tell us about your first outsourcing experience.
I need some water for this one.
Oh boy, he's going to get all moistened up here.
So almost 9 years ago, I
cue the music.
I had learned about outsourcing from an audio download that I had, and I got so excited about it because I learned about outsourcing in the book The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
That you listened to? Or did you read that one?
Well, of course I listened to that one. I listened to that one multiple times. But the outsourcing thing seemed really foreign to me. And I've used that line before and realized that that's kind of course outsourcing is foreign.
Yeah, it's pun intended.
But an intended pun there now. Outsourcing was it seemed too big of a step from what I learned from 4-Hour Workweek. But then a friend of mine, John, he's a friend of mine now, I listened to this audio, and within 36 hours, I had hired my first person.
Wow.
Because it just I had a paradigm shift about, I can actually do this, and I didn't realize that you could hire somebody for $400 a month. So I hired my first person. This is what I was still an employee back then. I was an employee doing telemarketing sales, but I also wrote articles for them as an independent contractor. Mm-hmm. So they did article marketing back then. They would give me topics and tell me to write an article of a certain length of words. And depending on the length, they would pay me $10 to $12 per article. So then I learned about outsourcing right after starting this article writing thing, and I decided to hire a writer.
A ghostwriter.
A ghostwriter in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And so I would give her the topic. She would write the article. I would proofread it, correct it a little bit, and then I'd send it off. I'd get paid $10 or $12, and I'd pay her a couple bucks. And it kept going for a while, and over time she got better and better. So this was a pretty awesome setup. I was pretty proud of myself. Yeah, I'm outsourcing. Well, fast forward a few months, and I hadn't been keeping tabs on things. I hadn't been really taking care of quality control.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And I just decided to check. So I grabbed an article. Something must have triggered it. Like I read something like that's really good. So I copied
good for the ghostwriter.
I copied the paragraph and pasted it into a tool that I think it was Grammarly that I used, and it basically said, this sentence was pulled from here, this was pulled from here, and I was like, this whole thing that she had written was just plagiarized content pieced together from other sources.
Without attributions at all.
Oh no, it was like, here's the article.
Oh.
And so I had submitted, I went back in the history and found that there were 50 articles that I had submitted to my company that I'd already been paid for that were plagiarized.
Wow.
So I fired her. I probably could have gone to her and talked to her and said, "Did you know?" But I think she knew.
And they didn't fire you.
Well, as soon as I knew, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get in big trouble if they catch this.
Right.
So I went in that very next morning, and I went and I went to the CEO of the company and sat down, and I said, "I have something I need to share with you." He thought it was hilarious. He wasn't mad at all.
Oh,
He just thought it
wow.
was funny. But he wasn't my supervisor over that position, so he said, you got to go talk to this guy who was a punk kid, much younger than me, and liked having his position of authority, and he did not like it. And so I was allowed to rewrite the 50 articles myself that I'd already been paid for, but I was not allowed to
You were allowed.
be an article writer anymore.
I would
Well,
say so.
part of it is a learning experience. Because, man, after that happened, what do you think I did? Within a couple of months, I had 10 employees. I had caught the bug.
I wouldn't think you'd have done that.
Oh, I caught the bug of outsourcing. I realized what I could do. I just blamed myself for that problem happening. Because I realized, man, this thing can really work. You know, I mean, yeah, it had a bad ending in that specific story, but just seeing what was possible, I'm like, okay, that was my first try.
Do these people pay taxes? Are you responsible for any of that, or insurance?
You don't have
or
to worry
anything,
about that unless they're U.S. citizens. Then you have to worry about taxes and insurance. But when they're in another country like that, it's just like you're paying an independent contractor. So I call them employees, but technically they're not employees.
Yeah, they're like 1099 type people or whatever. Here,
That's an advantage.
that is an advantage for
Huge
sure.
advantage.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got one more story, and this one's a recent one, and it's a doozy. It's a doozy.
Get
But
your pillows.
You
everyone.
think. So I've been outsourcing for 8.5 years, and I really only have these two stories to share of bad experiences.
Oh.
And I'm not hesitant to share this because why hide it? But this was kind of a doozy. So I won't mention names, but I hired a guy last November as a video editor, and he's very skilled. He could do everything I wanted, even using Adobe After Effects. And he worked for me for a couple months. But some of the communications that we had, I was suspicious of. I had some suspicions, but I was getting work. You know, I had suspicions in the hours that he was reporting. I had suspicions in I wanted a certain output, and he would report that his computer couldn't handle it and certain things. But, you know, I'd had experience already, and I knew what should have been possible. But then it came to a point where I needed to hire a second person in that same position. And he recommended that I hire his brother. And I cut corners in my hiring process. I wasn't as thorough in hiring the brother. I just kind of trusted. And you're going to like this story. So now I've got his brother and him working for me doing that same position. And I started to have more suspicions, but I'm a trusting guy. I mean, I've had such a great experience for 8 years. And in fact, one of the editors on this video has worked with me that entire time. He started with me on my web design team. I love my team and I trust them, and they deserve that trust. But in this case, I started to have some suspicions, and I just started thinking about them more and more often. And then one of my other team members came to me and said, "Nate, I think," and I'll just say the second guy, the brother, "I think the brother is a dummy." And as soon as I heard that, I'm like, yeah, that's what my guess was too. Meaning that, and so we decided, you know what, we better.
Not a real person?
Not a real person.
Yeah. Not an idiot.
We think that
just doesn't exist.
Okay, so here's the first person I hired, and here's the brother that we hired.
Right.
I think the brother really exists and has a name.
Oh,
but was not
it.
really an employee.
Yeah.
Didn't really do work for me. Didn't really do a trial assignment when I went to hire him and whatnot. And so I decided, well, before I put the brakes on anything or mix things up, let's find out for sure. And so normally you'd think I'd be mad, but I felt like, ooh, I'm a detective. I'm going to figure this out. And I put on my detective hat. And we went into some of the analytics of our project management tools, and I found concrete, almost like, how did I not see this before? Just anyway, we found total proof, and what we found out was happening is person A was actually only working about 80 hours a month, so just part-time hours, but he was reporting full-time hours, and he was reporting full-time hours for his brother.
My.
So yeah. I was paying 4 times the work that was being done, and that had been going on for a few months. So, yeah, that can happen. That can happen.
Because you've never been there.
That's never happened to me before. And
I mean, you've never been there to actually go over and talk to them, meet them? Never made a boss visit of any kind, right?
Correct. Just this morning, I was talking to one of my team members that she was asking me if I'd ever been to the Philippines because she's just worked for me for a few months, and I said no, but I'm hoping to go this year. I'm really hoping to go. Looking forward to it.
But still, overall, I mean, that's a disadvantage. But I mean, I don't know if we're done with the list of disadvantages, but those are some doozies. But like you were saying, in the last 8 or 9 years, only those 2 real major kind of issues.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe attrition here and there or whatever.
Yeah, so I want to end this video with a positive. The team member that was a project manager on my website team that's been with me for over 8 years now. Such a cool example, or such a good story. He'd worked with me for several years, and there was a time then where I needed to hire another graphic designer. He recommended his brother. And I took a look at his brother. I had his brother apply, and his brother didn't have the skills. He wasn't at the level that I needed, so I had to pass, and I hired somebody else. 2 more years go by, and I need another graphic designer. His brother says, you know what, I think my brother is ready now. I've been teaching him. I've kind of been tutoring him, mentoring him, plus he's got 2 years of school where he's been studying graphic design. Can he apply again?
Yeah.
And I said, absolutely. So he applied. He had the skills. He had exactly what I was looking for. I mean, my project manager knew exactly, so he could train him perfectly. And he's been working with me for several years now. And it's so cool. So we'll call him my project manager. He's and this is cool too. So he's a single guy, and over the years I've given him raises because he's been such a great, he's just been so reliable. He puts out all the fires. Company would not be the same. Company would not be the same without you. And so I've paid him more, and I've come to find out he actually paid for his brother's college education.
Oh.
Which just totally touched my heart and made me so grateful to have him.
Yeah, good thing you hired
him. And then he let me know just a week or 2 ago that he's engaged. He's going to be getting
married. The brother?
Soon. No, the project manager. Without dropping names.
Phil, Lou, Ted. Yeah.
So
that's
anyway,
cool. Congratulations.
Just wanted to end this video on advantages and disadvantages with definitely a positive note. I love my team in the Philippines.
Oh, man, that was a long one.
That was a long one. If you watch this long, man, I'm sure they're already a subscriber.
Yeah, no kidding. And if you're not, are you kidding me? If you've made it this long, you've subscribed 1,000 times.
Now,
how do I make it stop?
If you've already experienced outsourcing and you've had good or bad experiences,
love to hear from you.
Share them in the comments below. It'll be a fun conversation.